Simply pull back on the collar, slide that right there. And checking our pressures is exactly what I'm gonna do. And again, with that compressor running, we can see we are way low. So what do we do about it? Well, we can buy some R134A. Opening the valve, in this sight glass, you can see the refrigerant moving through the system. The other part of the equation is the temperature coming out of the vents. Now we are sitting down at 43 degrees. I'm now seeing 36.5 degrees. That is incredible. So I got in my truck the other day to run some errands, and lo and behold, the air conditioning system wasn't cooling. Well, it was kind of cooling, just not a whole lot. I have this temperature gauge here in this vent. I always have it here, so I always know how well the system's doing. And today, for example, it's not very hot. This temperature gauge is currently reading 90 degrees. But as I was driving around today with the AC on full blast, it was only able to get down into about the 60-degree range, maybe just under that. I'll go ahead and crank the AC on. You can see it's on max. And that gauge is dropping. We just went below 70 degrees, but it's not dropping very fast. And looking here at the compressor, you can see it's currently not running, but there we go, it just kicked on. So we do know that we have some charge in the system. It's been a few minutes now, and we still haven't dropped below 60 degrees. And I'm gonna double verify that that gauge is working properly with this infrared thermometer. And this looks like we're reading about 65 degrees-ish. I can see the compressor is kicking on, so it knows that there's refrigerant in the system. Now the question is it just simply low? Now to answer that question, I went and bought this. This is an air conditioning manifold gauge set, and it's meant for R134A. And my system here is an R134A system, and we can see that in multiple places here. So let's go ahead and open this thing up and see what's inside. You do have your set of hoses here in the top, and underneath this paperwork, we can see the actual manifold. And this actually looks like a nice set. Hey guys, just a really quick note here. I am not a professional. I am not a professional mechanic, nor am I a professional when it comes to air conditioning systems or anything like that. I'm just simply a DIYer doing my very best to do the very best job I can do while being safe and responsible. So please do your own due diligence, do your own research, and come to your own conclusions. This video is for entertainment purposes only. All right, let's see if we can set these gauges up together. So I'm gonna pull the hoses out of the top here. You can see we have three different colors. We have blue, red, and yellow. Now this blue hose is for the low pressure side, and you can see on the manifold, it is actually color coded. You can see the blue hose goes on this side. Okay, with the manifold here, I'm gonna take this side of the blue hose with the little angle on it, and I'm just gonna hand tighten it right there on that port, and that is good to go. Then I'm going to take this other side of the blue line, and again, just hand tighten it right onto this coupler. And finally, by simply pulling back on this collar here, I should be able to store this, yep, right on to that valve there. Now the red hose does the same thing. I'm going to hand tighten it to the red side. Then I'll grab this coupler and I'll hand tighten it to this. And of course, simply pull back on the collar and slide that right there. And last but not least, we'll take the angled side of the yellow, go ahead and hand tighten it right onto the center port there. And the other side of the yellow is going to get stored right there. Included with the kit is this quick reference guide, and these are full colored quick reference guides to show you how to set up for your situation. And checking our pressures is exactly what I'm going to do right now. So the first step on the card is to close all valves. Now on the manifold here, you can see clockwise is to close, but coming over here to the coupler, you can see it is counterclockwise to close. Okay, so all valves are currently closed. The second step has us connecting the hoses to the manifold and the couplers, which we've already done. The third step tells us to attach the couplers to the AC system. Okay, here you can see I already have the coupler attached to the low pressure side of the system. You can usually find the low pressure line pretty easily because it's the fatter line. So I'm just going to pull back on the collar here and put it right on that line, and it pushes right on. You let go of the collar, and now it is locked in place. Remember, all these valves are closed. One other thing I think is very important here before you start the engine is to make sure that these lines are completely safely out of the way. What you don't want is any one of these lines getting down here into the belt or the fan. That would not be good. So you can see mine are hanging safely off the front of the vehicle, and my red and blue lines are routed safely out of the way with no chance of getting tangled up into the belt or fan. And crank the AC on all the way. And at this point, our gauges still say 0 because I have not opened the valves on the couplers. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the high side by turning this valve clockwise. And I'm gonna do the same thing for this low pressure side. And here on an 80-degree day, we can see that our pressures are pretty low. This low side should be up in the 40 to 50 PSI range. It's rising right now because the compressor just kicked off. You only want to read the pressure readings as the compressor is running. So you can see just as that compressor kicked back on, now you can accurately read the pressure in the system, and we're hovering down there about 20 PSI. We really want to be up in the 40 to 50 PSI range. The temperature here on the concrete in the shade is about 80 degrees exactly. Well, how do we know what the pressure should be? Well, a quick internet search should give you the answer. In the case of today, with an 80-degree outside temperature, it looks like our low side should be 40 to 50 and the high side 175 to 210. And again, with that compressor running, we can see we are way low. Okay, so our pressures are low. So what do we do about it? Well, we can buy some R134A. This can is pure R134A, no additives at all. It is very, very important. You never want to mix different refrigerant types. If your system is R12, you need to use R12. If it's R134A, you need to use R134A. So yes, this is what a 12-ounce can looks like. This is what that top looks like. And that is precisely what this yellow line is for, is to attach to this bottle. The only problem is that's not the right connection. If you can see that red valve inside of there, that needs to be depressed. So you're gonna need something like this. This adapter screws onto that can and will depress that red valve in the can. You can then put the yellow line onto these threads here. Okay, with this adapter closed all the way, and that is counterclockwise, you can see it pulls that center post up into the valve. Now I can go ahead and screw it onto the can. And this is ready to go. And now I'll take my yellow line and screw it right onto this valve. This valve is open and this line is now charged with R134A. However, this line is also charged with outside air, which we need to get out. And the way you purge this yellow line is with this Schrader valve right here. Now I have eye protection and gloves on, and I'm gonna use this to depress that Schrader valve, but I'm first gonna cover it up with this rag. I have the can upside down. There we go. We are purged. And now with our yellow line completely purged of all outside air, I can simply open our valve here for the low side only. So I'm opening the valve. In this sight glass, you can see the refrigerant moving through the system. And you can see that sight glass going crazy. I'm barely opening the valve. Sometimes you might need to pick up the can and shake it a little bit. You can see it starts to pick up some of that refrigerant. And now I'll go ahead and close the valve. And we are still very low. Well, this 12-ounce can of refrigerant is completely gone. I know because it is not cold anymore. As the system was sucking the refrigerant out of this can, it was nice and frosty cold. And by shaking it and making sure that it's all out of here, seeing the sight glass is clear, and this can is no longer cold, I know that this can is empty. So now I can go ahead and shut this valve by turning it counterclockwise. I'll make sure that our blue valve is closed here, but you can see even with that entire can, I'm still very, very low. My pressures are low. My high side should be in the 175 to 210 range, and my low side should be in about the 40 to 50 range. So I'm gonna need some more refrigerant. All right, so what are our temperatures after that one can? You can see the temperature gauge here is just above the 50 mark, so we're maybe at like 52 degrees right there. Well, I just went to the store to pick up a few more cans of refrigerant, and on that drive, I noticed by looking at that little thermometer that's stuck in my vent, the temperatures were really low, and it felt great in the truck, colder than it's been in a long time. The temperatures on that little thermometer were right at 42 degrees, so that seems like it's right where it should be. The thing is though, my pressures after adding that one can were still pretty low. I want to make sure that on a very hot day, like a 90-degree plus day, that this AC system is still going to function really good. And so to make sure that happens, I'm going to add a little more refrigerant. I'm going to try to get those pressures up where they ought to be. You can see I have my gauges set up. All the valves are closed at this point because obviously they don't need to be open. The engine's not running. In the shade, on the concrete, it looks like we're about 82 degrees. In my garage here, on the concrete, we're about 81. I'm going to leave the manifold valves closed for now. I'm going to come over to the coupler side and open these valves. And with that compressor running, here are my current pressures. You can see we're right up there at about 30 on the low side. and about 175 there on the high side. But again, if we look at our chart here, even on a 75-degree day, our low side should be 35 to 45, and our high side should be 150 to 170. So we're below that, and we're at 80 degrees. 80, of course, says 40 to 50 on the low side, 175 to 210 on the high. So my low side is currently just below 30, and my high side is currently about 175. Okay, I'm gonna disconnect the yellow line here, making sure all valves are still closed. I also have to reattach this adapter so that center post is pulled back all the way. I'll go ahead and screw it onto this can, nice and tight there. And then I'll screw the yellow line onto that adapter. And with everything securely tightened, I'm gonna go ahead and open this valve. Okay, so this can is now charged into this line, but remember, we have to purge the outside air out of this line. Now again, to do that, I'm just gonna press in the Schrader valve there, but I'm gonna cover it with a towel. We are now purged. And with that, we now know there is no more outside air in this line. This is all R134A refrigerant. The only thing I have to do now is open the low side valve, and I'll go ahead and do that with that compressor running. I can see in the sight glass here that there is refrigerant flowing. I'm shaking the can a little. I don't know if you're supposed to, but I feel like maybe you should. I'm gonna go ahead and close the valve. And my pressures are still a little low, so I'm gonna go ahead and open the valve again. And I'm shaking it, turning it to the side, turning it back up a little, turning it to the side. Okay, I just closed the valve. I'm gonna check my pressures here. I'm gonna let things kind of get settled for a little bit. And our pressures still aren't where we want them to be, so I'm gonna open the valve again. This can isn't empty yet. Well, I just finished up that second can, so we are 24 ounces into the system. For some reason, I feel like I need to go drive this thing around a little bit just to let the refrigerant circulate through the whole system with some different RPMs, because as you saw when I first hooked up the gauges after I got back from buying more refrigerant, my pressures were actually higher than they are now. So I feel like maybe that refrigerant needs to circulate a little bit, maybe get up to temperature, so I can get some better readings. Now the other part of the equation is the temperature coming out of the vents, and you can see now we are sitting down at 43 degrees. On both of these, they both agree. So this system is definitely functioning exactly like it's supposed to. That says 42.4 degrees. I think that's the coldest it's probably ever been coming out of these vents. All right, driving along here, and I'm seeing temperatures at 37.8 degrees on that digital thermometer. 37.8 degrees. As I drive along here, we're at just under 1,500 RPM, doing about 36 miles an hour. I honestly think, since I've bought this truck, that's the coldest this air has ever been coming out of these vents. I'm now seeing 36.5 degrees. That is incredible. Well, we just got back and you can see my temperatures are 38.1 coming out of that vent. Well, my gauges are reconnected, and it looks like my theory about driving the truck around to see if that somehow normalizes the pressures was kind of totally wrong, because the pressures seem exactly the same as what they were before I went and drove the truck around. However, we're getting 38 degree air out of those vents. The pressures do seem a little low still based off of the temperatures outside, but I'm gonna go ahead and call that good. With the AC in the truck set on max, that compressor is not cycling off, and I don't think it should, but it was before, even when set on max, and that tells me that there's a low pressure cutoff switch that was activating, causing the compressor to shut down. The last thing I wanna do is overfill the system. So being that my pressures seem okay and my temperatures in the truck seem very good, I think for today, I'm gonna call this one a success. I added 2 full 12-ounce cans to the system. The system, I think, was very, very low, lower than I thought it was. Yes, I would like to see those pressures more in the zone that they kind of should be, according to the internet anyway, but the system seems to be very happy. I'm getting very cold air, and the real test is gonna be in a few days when we're getting over 90-degree temperatures outside and probably a lot of humidity here in Tennessee. Well, to conclude, I think this is a success. What do you think? Comment below, let me know what you think. Maybe you have experience with air conditioning systems in vehicles, and if you do, and if you think that I did everything correctly as far as, stopping when I stopped and, according to the temperatures and the pressures, let me know down in the comment section below, because I feel like I don't want to overfill this thing. That was another fear I had. We already know that it was underfilled, but we do know that there was still refrigerant in the system. Now, one other thing I will say, okay, so if your system is completely not working, like it's just not coming on, the compressor's not coming on, and let's just say you go get a manifold gauge set like I just got, and you hook it up and your pressures are 0. In that case, you do not want to just do what I did, because now you have potential atmospheric air and moisture in your system. So what needs to happen at that point is you need to figure out where your leak is and why it's leaking. After you've figured that out and you've fixed the problem, you then need to pull a vacuum on the system, and that vacuum needs to be on there for a long time, like 45 minutes to an hour, and that's to get all of the moisture out of the system and also to test if the system is fully sealed. After that's done is when you can then add your refrigerant to the system. I didn't have to go through all that because, like I said, my system was already pressurized. So I knew I didn't have any atmospheric air or moisture in the system. It was just low on pressure. And so therefore, I was able to add a couple cans, get my AC system back, and this thing is back in service. So thank you guys for watching. I hope this helped you in some way. Please note, I am not a professional when it comes to this stuff. I'm just a DIYer here in my garage, doing what you guys do, doing my research online on YouTube, and I'm learning as I go. So I hope this helped. If it did, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up. It really helps this video and the channel. And also, if you've watched this far and you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing. I'm Jimmy for One Road, and I will see you in the next one.